Hello, my name is Kid Arthur, and I am the founder and CEO of Tackleberry Solutions. We teach wartime tactics to citizens for home and civil defense purposes. Today is a special edition video. We're going to spell out some things for you guys, and I'm going to show you where this is going, and I'm going to show you what it is that my company's been trying to prepare you for this entire time. For those of you that are not tracking all the moving pieces, because there's a lot of chaos going on right now, I want to kind of show you how it all fits together. So, for overall purposes, there's certain keywords I'm going to use to try to ensure that certain algorithms do not prevent this video from being seen. The first one thing I think we need to discuss is the jab. For some time now, we've heard things about the dark winter. Dark winter this, dark winter that. Understand that dark winter was actually a pre-planned operation or attack that never took place. It was done by the Pentagon, by our military, and it was designed, the idea was that they would actually disperse a highly contagious disease using airports. The disease of choice was smallpox. Now I want you to think about this. I've been vaccinated for smallpox. The average person has not. I was, because I was in the military and I've been overseas. That is something that we have not vaccinated for a very long time now. So that is something that we are no longer immune to. That and MERS, which has about a 30% kill ratio. I mentioned that because of the jab. The jab, to something that has a much higher success of survival, was a conditioning. I pointed out in an earlier video about forced compliance and where that was leading you. I stated there that the muzzle was leading you to the jab, and the jab was really leading you to something else. Well, that's another jab, which will eventually lead to a certain mark, if you will. It talks about in Revelations how you will not be able to buy or sell without the mark. Well, that's where we're heading. So, understand that when this jab has been fought so hard, the people like myself that are opposed to forced compliance of that nature will be heavily persecuted, even more when something more dangerous comes out, such as smallpox, a disease that the only samples that we know of are currently in the hands of somebody named Bill Gates. Also, the only already made jab for that disease is also being controlled and by the same person. Therefore, and ergo, that individual stands to make a lot of money if smallpox breaks out tomorrow in America. But it's more than just that. There's more to it than that. Now, that is to help build political strife and division within our nation. I mean, just look what it's already done. But when something even more lethal comes out than what we're already dealing with, you're going to see even more pressure placed on those people who are refusing the jab. Now, there's herbal medications that will treat smallpox. I'm hoping to, once I get that information in, to actually disperse that through this frequency and on this channel, and hopefully you guys will be able to have that. I told you before in the previous video that we did a lot of herbal medication, because at this point, there's absolutely no way I would trust that jab. I've told you I've had it, but my children have not. And there's no way on earth I would trust anything of that nature in my child at this point in time. I will trust herbal medication, God's medicine, long before I will man's. So, moving along, why is that important? Well, we'll kind of see how that picture comes in later, because right now I'm going to show you another piece of the puzzle. As of right now, and I'm still waiting to get confirmation of that, a lot of the majority of the cargo ships that are in our oceans are owned by Chinese corporations. Now, what is happening with the cargo ships didn't make sense until I was informed about that. Our West Coast has more or less stopped taking all cargo ships. So the ports on the West Coast are actually emptying out. The trucks are moving them. They're becoming less and less full. There's not a whole lot there. But all the ships have been rerouted to the East Coast. Now that is important because if we ever needed supplies or resupport from an allied force, it would come from the Atlantic side because that's where England and Ireland and all these other countries that are allies with us are. They're on our East Coast. So our East Coast ports are all backed up and there are ships sitting in the ocean in the docking and shipping lanes we would have to use to get allied reinforcement in, and they're blocking them up and they're just sitting there waiting to be unloaded. Meanwhile, all these cargo ships are being sent back to China, who's not loading them, and they're sitting in their docking lanes empty, stagnant. Now, the first thing that hit my mind was, were they trying to destroy the shipping industry? And then I realized that no, that wasn't it. After talking with somebody else who knows more about this because he was a naval officer, he simply explained to me that, no guy, you're missing it. During World War II, after Pearl Harbor, our Navy was so small and so destroyed that we actually used shipping container vessels, cargo ships, to ship our armament and artillery pieces to theater outside of France and Japan. Starts to make sense. West Coast ports are wide open, and all the ships are now sitting on the coast of Japan. And all those ships can now quickly be turned into shipping vessels for artillery pieces and armament vehicles. Because you're not putting that in a plane and flying it across the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. You're going to have to put it on a ship. It's that simple. Okay, well, let's stop and think about this for just a moment. If they're doing that to stage the ships so that they can bring it over here, there's one other piece we're missing, and that is Taiwan. Why Taiwan? Because Taiwan has a deep water channel directly to our West Coast, which means that they could very easily put a nuclear submarine and send it directly to our West Coast, and by the time we saw it, it would be within striking range. Our sonars would not pick it up until such time as it was within striking range of our country. Starts to make a little more sense now, doesn't it? Remember a while back I talked about how the Chinese soldiers were doing cold weather warfare training just outside of Washington State, about 200 miles north of them in Canada, and then the same thing was going on down in Mexico, about 100 miles across the border of California. Now we're having probing attacks happening down in Texas. Why? Because they're trying to draw all militia forces down to the far southeast, away from the east or western seaboard. Why? Well, because that's their only real threat. That's why. Because the military, thanks to the jab, has been thoroughly weeded out. Anyone who questions it, anyone who even looks at it goes, you know, I don't like how you're trying to force this on me, is being pushed right out of the military, and what's worse, being made an example of. So they're absolutely being destroyed. So now we have a military that is 100% compliant with whatever comes down from the top. No questions asked. Why does that matter? Because when this all starts and they get told, hey, we had to have the United Nations come in and help us because you jackwagons couldn't do it. Y'all need to answer to them. And China comes rolling down from the north in UN vehicles going, yeah, we're in the UN, we're here to help. And what they're really doing is locking down the daggone western seaboard for the ships now to come rolling in. Well, they're not going to have any resistance because all of our militias are down in Texas. Make sense? One other thing. There's two other things that are going to happen before this. I told you guys that anytime you try to do an invasion, you kill the power. You stop all forms of communication, right? Well, how are they going to do that? Well, now we're hearing, matter of fact, I heard again today for like the 6th time, about rolling blackouts this winter. because of oil shortages, propane shortages, things of that nature. And most of you are going, well, how the hell does that affect the electricity? Well, allow me to explain to you. When you go to a nuclear power plant, the nuclear reactor has to be cooled by water. That water, cold water hitting the nuclear reactor, heats it, causes steam, turns a wind turbine. That's how the whole process works. But it has to have water. Where does that water come from? Pumps. Massive pumps, about 20 of them to be exact, that run off of propane. That pulls the water out of a river or something of that nature and uses it to cool the reactor. So when those pumps can't turn and pull water, what do you think happens to the nuclear reactor? It gets shut down. Well, how about that? Now we have rolling blackouts. Why rolling blackouts? Well, the same reason for the muzzle and the jab. Forced compliance and mostly conditioning. They're conditioning you to get used to that because, oh, well, the power went out. Well, it'll be back on a couple days just like last time. 4 months later, still not back on. But when it does come back on, China owns the West Coast. You're being invaded on the East, and there's total freaking civil war everywhere, total chaos, and you've been in SHTF mode now for 4 freaking months. It's too damn late. You're a day late and $1 short, right? That's why it's conditioning you for when the real attack on the power grid comes. Now, one other thing you're missing, and that is an epic amount of sickness to wipe out any resistance force along the Rocky Mountains. Because that is China's #1 problem, is militias and any resistance force that would formulate along the Rockies that they would not be able to get over that hump and finish their drive across the country. Well, how do you resolve that? Well, you know what? MERS and smallpox would probably do that. Starting to make sense about dark winter now, ain't it? Everybody's sick as crap. It's short. I mean, anybody of y'all that's had the coronavirus is as weak as as pathetically small or weak as it is. You know the same thing I do. You're about as useless as tits on a board in a nursery whenever you're sick like that. Well, imagine what it's like when it's actually something serious like MERS or smallpox. Think about it. Now, why am I telling you all this? Why is this important to you? Because you are the chosen. That's right. God has chosen you. For whatever reason, you are being chosen to do something very special. And I am about to tell you what that special something is. In the future, I am going to give you directive from this channel and other sources. Directive. You need to pay attention to this frequency. Most importantly, though, you need to prepare yourself. What you need to do right now is get serious about your training. You need to get serious about your networking. You need to get serious about all the things I've been talking about through all of my videos for some time now. You need to fortify your house. And if you don't know how, click the link right here. Start right there. Purchase the fortification, the home defense manuals. Strengthen your home's fortification so you can survive. Secondly, you need to network and network and network. If you don't have an amateur radio, download the dang manuals from our website. They're free. And it'll teach you everything you know about VHF and HF frequencies. Get on there and start listening. You'd be amazed how much information and crosstalk you will capture. Furthermore, in the future, I'm going to give you a frequency that I will be broadcasting on. So when this is shut down, you'll still be able to get information and intel from me. Because that's what I'm using to get my intel along with other avenues of approach. You need to get your medical red tight. Not just any medical, but herbal medication. Something that you can self-renew and constantly have and regenerate on your own. Because traditional medicines will no longer exist. When that power goes out, any nurse, any doctor can tell you they're up a creek. They're out of their element at that point in time. You need to train. You need to get your guys right. And if there's something you're having problems with or you just don't know, now is the time to daggone get on it and make it happen. Contact me at Tackleberry Solutions and talk to me. I'll answer the phone, leave a message, I'll definitely call you back. Hit us up on our email. Jump in our email thread. Learn some things. Buy some manuals from us. I promise you two things. One, our manuals cannot and will not be altered. Secondly, unlike some other manuals that I've already seen that have been altered because they're digital. Secondly, I am going to tell you stuff that I know is going to work because I've done it and am doing it myself. And I will do everything I can to make sure you're red tight and you're ready to go for what's coming. Why? Because we're all Americans. And if we don't work together, ain't none of us making it through this. Stay tuned for further special broadcasts because they are, like this one, very important, very informative, and very direct. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day.